You're listening to Food Tech Talk, supply chain insights from farm to fork, a podcast discussing the latest trends and technology in the food and supplement industries, featuring conversations with regulatory experts, quality and safety champions, and thought leaders across the industry. I'm your host, Lydia Adams. Let's jump right in. Welcome back to Food Tech Talk. I am joined by our CEO of Trustwell, Katy Jones, today. Many of you know Katy from hosting the podcast and, also just being a legend in the food industry. But she's here to talk today about, the state of the food industry and her recent comments at the FDA. So I'll go ahead and introduce Katy for those of you that don't know her well. Katy Jones is the Chief Executive Officer at Trustwell. She's an accomplished leader in the software industry, specializing in the food sector. With a passion for food safety and transparency in the supply chain, Katy has been a driving force in educating and advocating for supplier management and traceability across the food industry. Katy's journey with Trustwell began back in 2015 when she joined FoodLogic as the Chief Marketing Officer. Over the years, she steadily progressed with the company, assuming roles as COO and eventually CEO. Katy's dedication and contributions play a vital role in the success of Trustwell and previously FoodLogic. When FoodLogic merged with Escher Research to form Trustwell, Katy remained with the company and now leads as our CEO. Katy's educational background includes a bachelor's degree in journalism and mass communication from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and a master's degree in data marketing communications from West Virginia University. Welcome back to the show, Katy. Thank you so much for joining again.
Thank you, Lydia.
So, it's been a while since we've chatted here. Just wanted to kind of get a little touch base of what you've been up to and what's been going on since you took the role of CEO.
Yes, no, it's been an absolute whirlwind since February earlier this year, taking over the helm of CEO at Trustwell, continuing to bring the teams together post-merger, as well as better understanding just the vision and future of our roadmap and getting out, talking to prospects, talking to customers, and just recently been to several trade shows and events. So lots of travel. It's been great to just continue getting out in the industry and listening to what's going on. What are the needs in the food industry? And then obviously bringing that back and making sure that we're aligned to that here at Trustwell.
Yes, awesome. Yeah, it has definitely been a busy few months for us. And one of those things that you've done recently is actually speaking to the FDA. And so today I wanted to kind of just get a recap of what you talked about and why you think it's important to have, technology providers bring these comments to the FDA and really get that feedback loop with that organization.
Yeah, absolutely. The FDA called for public commentary from technology providers predominantly. There was a, wide range of speakers at the meeting. And for me personally, I shared, our vision, my personal connection to food safety, how important it is to us as a business, me personally, as well as I think emphasizing specific to food traceability and FSMA 204 that we are implementing these programs today. And the industry, while, there is a lot of change and certainly some pushback that we're seeing from the industry. The technology exists. There is a lot of change management, but it was important for me to come and present and communicate not only on behalf of Trustwell, but on behalf of our customers who are actively doing this, implementing whole chain traceability programs across their food chain and capturing that data and realizing the benefits from that. And so in tandem with that, announcing that we have to date captured over 200 million critical tracking events in our platform, and that number goes up every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that we were able to be a part of that. Having listened to, the various comments from that meeting, what did you see as kind of like the current state of food traceability today and where we're heading with transparency in the industry?
Certainly a lot of commentary around data capture. I think that's certainly something that is an incredibly hot topic. I think that because it is so disparate across different companies and their level of readiness. So to say, as an example, we're integrated and several of our customers are implementing RFID to capture their data. That's a level of maturity that not every company is at today. And so making sure that companies understand that there are a variety of ways to get this data in and how they need to get that data from their supply chain partners. So RFID is a really exciting future, and we're getting there, but there's still a fair amount of maturity that needs to happen in the industry regarding data ingestion. Data quality and data standards is another piece. And I just got back from GS1 US. I serve on the executive leadership committee there for retail grocery, and lots of conversation around the importance of making sure that we have a standard approach to this data. So the location identifiers, the product identifiers, how a lot code is assigned, and how that data is exchanged between supply chain partners, a very, very important piece, and something certainly that I think a lot of entities and other companies may not truly understand. And so if you're saying you don't need any kind of data standard, in order to share data across, you have to have a standard. And so that's a really critical point as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of RFID, with the emerging technologies right now, like I'm just thinking of the Trustwell Williott partnership we've just announced. I guess what other innovations are you thinking are really going to lead the industry forward in this area to create that global standard?
Yeah, no, ambient IoT is a very exciting opportunity for the food industry. It does help bridge the gap in that adoption curve, right? So if we're not quite ready for RFID, how can we leverage ambient IoT, which typically has a lower cost and can address issues of connectivity and internet within facilities. And so that's very exciting. I certainly look at how food companies are leveraging the data beyond food safety. And I think that's a critical point to, yes, companies are certainly, staring down the pending deadline of FSMA 204, but how they reach beyond food safety within their organizations and bring in operations, bring in logistics, bring in your CFO, and demonstrate how this data can actually have a really significant impact on your business and your bottom line. So those are areas where we've seen companies and customers that we work with really take it to the next level in terms of their traceability and not just looking at it in this very siloed way, just from a regulatory compliance standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always think about that terminology of going beyond compliance, not just reaching, that standard, but what can we do more? And speaking of the regulatory environment, you mentioned FSMA 204, you mentioned, kind of some of the back and forth with the industry. What do you think is going to be sort of that regulatory environment maybe in, 3 to 5 years from now? And where are we headed with that?
Yeah, we actually just received a really excellent briefing as a part of the ELC and on globally, as well as obviously within the US, and certainly seeing a significant increase in labeling and interest in labeling regulations. So I think there are some proof of concepts for front of pack in the US. There's obviously increased regulations in Canada and Mexico around in this area. I think how much more information the consumer is receiving and wants to receive. There's also an interesting push towards a 2D barcode, not just for point of sale, but for how this information, again, is captured and then passed on to the consumer. So, we're doing some interesting stuff in this area in terms of 2D. And then, we're really excited, obviously, about the application of artificial intelligence and how that can connect to just a quicker analysis of data and a quicker exposure of risk. And so that's what we're really focused on in terms of our product development in the future at Trustwell.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned labeling. I think sometimes it gets lost. So, looking at the Trustwell suite of products and kind of how, it brings together that food safety, labeling, formulation, recipes, all of it maybe share with the audience a little bit more about kind of that future view of Trustwell Connect and how we're putting all of that into one space for the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. When we merged these two companies together, there was such a vision for how you connect R&D and food formulation into supplier management, traceability, and recall. So we envision a future where at the scan, let's say of that QR code, that you're not only getting the steps along the supply chain that food transformed into, or that the travel passport per se of that food along its journey, the nutritional requirements that you need, the allergens, all of this data at the scan, of one quick QR code, but not just that at point of sale, you actually can't purchase that product because that product has been, locked down within the organization because it is in a recall, all in real time. And so how we connect that nutritional data with traceability and recall, I also see that with this data and understanding, we just launched supplier scorecarding, and how maybe R&D can leverage that data that they get from supply chain to understand, okay, I have 3 potential suppliers that I can work on for this new granola bar. What supplier should I use, right? Based on this scorecarding that's based on, are they sharing traceability event data? How many quality issues have we had from that supplier? So leveraging that data from food safety to inform, potentially safer products based on the data that you have of that supplier. So there's so much application here in terms of the connected platform, and we're just getting started. It's very exciting.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And I think, kind of thinking through where these expectations are coming from, when we talked about going beyond compliance, it's really, also within the consumer expectations. So are you seeing that out there in the industry where, the consumers are starting to say, hey, like, I want to know where this came from and I want to know what's in my food?
Yes. Now, the very definition of food safety is evolving and changing. So it's no longer, does this food make me sick or not? It really is, how does this impact my macros, right? How much fiber is in this? My aim is to get 25 grams a day, and, I need to hit that goal, right? So I think a lot of people are, on this personal journey and need to be empowered with that data, and food companies need to be able to offer it to them in real time. So there's that piece of it. And, I think that it really is being driven. And, here in the US, this legislation really is being driven by consumers as well.
Yeah.
And the importance of that. And I think that, the faster the industry and individual companies can kind of see the benefit to the consumer, that, really at the end of the day, people should be able to eat food, that doesn't make them sick globally. And that's very important to, to us at Trustwell and to me personally. And going beyond that, that's baseline, right? But going beyond that, how much more real information that food companies can provide to their consumer. I think that's really it. Sustainability practices, growing practices, all sorts of things that consumers are more and more interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. And the mission, I think aligning those missions it's just so important. And when I think about the mission of Trustwell, I know that really also aligns to your personal values. So I don't know if you mind sharing kind of like why it's really important to you and your family to be doing this work.
When my son turned 4, he was diagnosed with life-threatening tree nut allergy, and it was incredibly scary. It's something that really not a day goes by that I don't think about. He's getting older now. He's now 16, and we're going to colleges to see where he may go. And I'm looking at the digital menu boards to see if they list the allergens, because it's really, really important to him, obviously, and to me to make sure that he has the information that he needs to make informed decisions about the food that is safe for him to eat. And so I think everyone really, so many people here, especially within Trustwell, have this deeply personal connection to this. Everyone eats. And it really is something that day to day I think about, and the stress that puts on a family and a mother certainly is something that I'm, on a mission to make sure that we are just increasing the transparency. It's really just about the information that consumers have and to make sure that that is really clear. And when it's not, making sure that that product gets out of the supply chain as quickly as possible.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that just affects a lot more people than we even, think about. And it's just so important. So yeah, I'm so glad that we're taking these steps to make food safer for everybody. And before we wrap up, I have two other questions for you. So, having kind of risen up in the food industry, and as you said, originally not coming from this, what advice would you give to new food industry professionals who are, really looking to help with this mission of traceability?
Yeah, I push on the status quo because I think that's what's keeping many companies from moving forward, from taking the leap to change. There are so many industries that have been exactly where the food industry right now. I'll often talk about, there was a time when delivery drivers completely refused to scan a package at someone's front door. Would take too much time. And now I can log into my Amazon app and not only know approximately what time that package will get to my front door, I can see what block it is at. And I think we've got to take that next step. And I think, there is a certain segment of food industry professionals that are going to push that forward. And we see it in our customer base, and we see it with our advocates who are pushing this forward, internally within our company, but obviously within our customers as well. So push on the status quo, ask why not, because I think it's too easy to lean back on the excuses to really push this forward and to push traceability forward mainly.
I love that advice. All right, last question. So I always ask this, who in the industry would you like to take to lunch?
Michelle Obama. I know that sounds a little bit of a stretch in terms of the industry, but I think, she did wonderful things for childhood nutrition with some initiatives that she had. And I think that we're seeing that continue. So I really do personally believe in everyone's right and access to safe, affordable food. And so I think that's someone that, both personally and professionally, that I would love to have lunch with.
Awesome. Love that. All right, Katy. Well, thank you so much for joining us and giving us that touch base of, what's been happening with you and with Trustwell. And I know that our listeners really appreciate that. So thank you so much for joining again.
No, it was a pleasure. Thank you, Lydia.
Thank you for joining us for another bite-sized nugget of food tech talk, supply chain insights from farm to fork. To learn more about Trustwell and its technology platform that connects product formulation, nutrition analysis, and compliant labeling with traceability, recall readiness, and supply chain transparency, please visit www.trustwell.com. Thanks for listening.